Ladies and gentlemen, it is a beautiful day for costume and prop making. I'm Anthony at Chaos Rogue Designs, and today I'm going to be showing you how we paint this. Now this is the knife we made in the last video. Also, I did forget to show you one thing last video. I forgot to show you how to do the screw holes.
Fool of a took! Throw yourself in next time and rid us of your stupidity!
So right at the beginning of this video, I will be showing you how we do that as well, and then we'll very quickly move along to the painting. Now, in the painting in this video, we're going to be using a budget option for sure, but just because it's a budget option does not mean it is a bad option at all. I honestly use this stuff for most of the props that I'm going to be using for myself. Even stuff I've taken to conventions, I would use this as well. The stuff we're going to be talking about today is Mod Podge. Now, Mod Podge is it's definitely less expensive. You can use it indoors, which is nice as well. A lot of the sprays have to be used outdoors, of course, but this stuff you can just use at home. It does have a slight odor to it, but it's not that bad, it's okay. But I'm going to be showing you how we treat the foam as well. There's more to just putting this on it. Even if you're thinking about doing a different color scheme, I'm going to be going for something fairly traditional for the video, but if you want something like a blue knife, for example, seriously, blue knives are cool. Don't let anybody take that away from you. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so before we dive into painting, let's take care of those screw holes. We're going to be drilling those in. Now, if you have a rotary tool, they typically come with a drill attachment, which is absolutely perfect for this. If you don't have a rotary tool, then you could use an actual drill, or you can even use a manual tool like a screwdriver to push through the foam. It may be a little trickier to get it consistent with something like a manual screwdriver, but one of the best things about foam is you don't need excessive force to mark and manipulate it. This, for example, is a leather puncher and it does the job just fine. So now our prop is actually ready, we're going to give it a quick clean, so dust off any excess foam with a brush or something like that. We also want to remove as much pen and excess glue as possible. You'd be surprised how much this can stand out on a finished prop. Glue stains have a different texture to foam, which paint unfortunately can make quite obvious, and marker lines can sometimes still be seen after several layers of paint. Removing these now will mean less work later. Now, I'm using acetone to do this on mine, but honestly, white or methylated spirit works perfectly fine too. You can apply it to cotton buds or Q-tips? Is that what they're called across the pond? Huh. Now, I like to keep these videos light-hearted, but this stuff can potentially be super dangerous. Use a glove as you apply it, don't splash it anywhere, and most importantly, take your time. On top of that, the moment you're done, put that stuff away and dispose of your gloves, excess spirit and cotton buds. Now this stuff looks like water, and it's best to make sure that obvious mistake can't happen. And the last thing we're going to do for prep is seal our prop with a heat gun. Blasting your prop with one of these will force the cells on the surface of the foam to tighten up. And this is good because now it won't soak anything up like paint or primers. Foam is pliable under heat, so don't freak out if your prop bends. You can always heat it up again and straighten if you end up needing to. The idea is to hit every surface with this for a few seconds. You can see the surface of the foam slightly change colour when you do this, which means it's worked. This is a little bit hard to see on my camera with black foam, but you will be able to see it on your own prop. You can do some really cool stuff with heat on foam generally, but we will cover that another time and in another build guide. Alright, so prep is 100% done. Let me tell you how this Mod Podge stuff works. It's honestly pretty simple. It's a water-based sealer and it isn't toxic, which is great. You simply brush it onto your prop. Now I try and apply light, even coats, but even if you are a little bit heavy with the application, it really won't matter too much. It really is simple as that. A generous coat will take about 12 to 15 minutes to dry, and just for being neat and tidy's sake, I do one side at a time and just do something else while it's all drying. After a few coats, the surface will have a tactile, almost plastic feel to it. It will probably look a little scaly under the light as well, but don't worry, we're about to fix that. For this job I use wet sandpaper. No, not normal sandpaper that's wet, that's wrong. I mean actual wet sanding paper. This stuff is designed to be used when it's wet, and the sandy side of the paper is super fine. It works really well with Mod Podge. After a few passes with wet sandpaper, your prop will go from this to something that looks a little bit like this. It really is an awesome smooth finish, and especially for something like a knife, this is what you want, this is what you're aiming for. Just as a quick side note as well, with the wet sanding paper you will need to frequently wet it. The moment you start to feel it getting a bit dry on your fingers, it's time to put it back in the water and let it soak up a little bit. Right, now to tackle the painting itself. Now this bit is mostly up to you. Like I said at the beginning, blue knives are cool, but I'm going to be painting mine in a more traditional colour scheme. For this I use acrylic paints. Now you can use an airbrush if you have access to one, another thing that we will cover in a future video, but if you have one and you know how to use it, go right ahead. Today I'm using a brush. The key to this is getting the paint consistency right. You want it thin enough that you can brush it on without leaving stroke marks, but you want it thick enough that it doesn't run off like water. Just so I've got a bit of freedom and so I don't ruin a whole batch of paint if I make it too thin, I tend to put a blob of acrylic paint on my palette and just frequently apply water to my brush. It can take a bit of time doing it this way, but it really does the trick. The paints I used are on screen now because I can't remember their names, but in my experience, any paints that are even slightly above the cheapest stuff that you can find will usually give you an okay finish. Regardless what paint you use, you can tape edges up after they're painted if you're worried that you won't stay in the lines when you paint. Now this green tape you can see here is called frog tape. It's basically thick masking tape. Whenever I'm painting into an edge or corner, I put some of this down just in case I end up going over the lines. If I do now, it won't be an issue. Finally, I'm going to weather my prop a little bit. Now there are a few techniques that you can use, I will cover those in the future, but just so this video doesn't become an hour plus long, I'm going to show you just one simple thing that you can do. If you wish, of course, if you want a factory new looking prop, there's no need to do this bit. This is a really cool, simple but effective technique. You can mix some black or brown, or a mix of both if you want, with water. Now what you're trying to do is just make super watery paint. Now get a big brush and splash it on your prop. It can be a little bit scary splashing dark paints all over the prop you've just painstakingly made look awesome. But what you're going to do now with a paper towel is just dab off the excess. It will leave a little bit of colour when you do that. And you can leave a little bit more of this watery paint in areas that you do want to get a bit more dirty. So for my prop, I have tried to make sure that it goes right into the edges, right into the crevices, where I think a little bit of dust and dirt would go. And finally, I'm going to varnish my prop. I'm using this stuff, it's a spray and 2 coats of it. This is always worth doing because this will protect your paint job as well. Oftentimes these sealants are waterproof as well, so if you end up doing, let's say, a photo shoot and the worst happens and it starts to rain, well, at least your knife isn't going to start running as well. Alright, well if you've made it this far and you're following the steps, you've got a pretty cool prop in your hands right now, and it's probably all painted and all finished. Even if you haven't been making it and you've just been watching out of curiosity, for what it's worth, the download link isn't going to go anywhere, and if it's something you want to explore in the future, it's always going to be there for you to do it. Now, where did I put my one? Thanks, Claptrap.
Good as new, I think.
Alright, so just with my choices on the paint here, I didn't want to go 100% traditional, but it's just certainly less wacky than a lot of my props are. We've gone for a pewter, which is a very slightly blue kind of metal colour. I think it really pops well. You can see how it catches in the light because of the varnish as well. This has come out really good in my opinion. Could always go for a sharper, sort of more clean-cut finish if this was gunmetal. And hey, I used a shiny varnish. If you use a matte varnish, it won't all of a sudden make it look less like metal. It would probably actually look quite, just quite clean cut and quite sharp if you used a matte finish as well. That's yet another option you can do. But for me personally, I'm really happy with this color scheme and I really wouldn't want it any other way. Also, and it's been a bit tricky to see, it's probably no better here, but some of the weathering, it's very slight on here. I didn't want to make this look completely filthy, but I'm really happy how a lot of these bits came out. Could probably have put a little bit more in the edges, but you know, I'm still very, very happy with it. So that about wraps up our first build guide. It's been real good fun to make. It's going to be Halloween next month. So I've got a Resident Evil themed build for you guys. It's going to be another one that's fairly easy. It's going to be another blade, but you know, in the future, we're going to be moving on to guns and all sorts of cool stuff. If you've made it this far through the video, I presume you did enjoy it. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and hit the like button as well. That really helps us out. Also, if you really, really liked it and you want to have a bit more of a say in how videos go in the future, maybe even ideas for potential build guides, you can follow us on Patreon, and the link to that is in the description. As it's completely optional, but if you would like to do that for us, it is there as well. So that about wraps everything up. So take it easy, enjoy your prop. I'll see you next time.